Hello, my name is Seth LeBlond, and I am the Assistive Technology Coordinator at the Foundation for Blind Children. This video is going to be the first in a series of training videos that we're planning for all of you. And we are basically getting our ideas for what we want to train on from our MLB program subscribers. You can find more about the MLB program on our website at www.seeitourway.org. Today we are going to be talking about demystifying Braille displays. Braille displays are one of those tools that most people tend to find kind of complicated to set up and use, and we want to make it seem a little bit easier. There are lots of different models of Braille displays available, from the APH Orbit Reader to the HumanWare Brailliant series to the HIMS Braille Edge series to the Q-Braille to the Focus line from Vespero. Today we're going to be talking about the HumanWare Brailliant BI40X, which is a Braille display that is currently in our MLB product inventory. There are other Braille displays, as I mentioned, but the Brailliant is the one that we recommend the most often. That said, there are a lot of things that we can generalize among Braille displays, so the processes that I'm going to demonstrate today are generally going to be applicable to other Braille displays. What I'd like to get started with is an overview of what we find physically, a physical overview, if you will, of the Brailliant Braille display. When you open up the case, you find on your top panel some keys, and you also find your Braille display. Towards the rear of the Braille display, you find 8 dots. These correspond to the Braille keyboard. Dot 1, 2, 3 on your left side, and 4, 5, 6 on your right hand. Your pinkies should correspond to dots 7 for your left and dot 8 for your right hand, respectively. Dot 7 and dot 8 are generally used as backspace and enter when they're used by themselves, but they can also function as modifier keys when pressed in conjunction with other keys. More towards the front of the top panel, you find the 40-cell Braille display. On either side of the 40-cell Braille display, you find 3 keys. These are on the left side, going down from the top, C1, C2, and C3, and on the right side, C4, C5, and C6. C, in this case, stands for command. Above each Braille cell is also a small button called a cursor routing key. The cursor routing keys are used to move your cursor to wherever on a line you want the cursor to be if you're using the Braille display with JAWS or Fusion or any other screen reader on a Windows computer. When you're using iOS, the cursor routing keys will activate or open the item underneath the cursor routing key position. At the very front edge of this Braille display are 2 buttons that are both space bars. The reason there are 2 of them is, I guess, so that you can press one with your left thumb or one with your right thumb. On the left-hand side of the Braille display, we have 3 items. At the very front, we have a USB-A port. That port enables you to connect a USB flash drive. You can find the right kind of USB flash drive almost anywhere. Just to the rear of that, you'll find the power button, And then towards the back of the left panel, you'll find a USB-C port, which can be used to connect your Braille display to the charger, or it can be used to connect the Braille display to your computer so that you can use it with USB instead of Bluetooth. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. On the front panel, we have 5 keys. From left to right, these keys are previous, left thumb key, home, right thumb key, and next. And those keys do different things depending on what you're trying to do with the Braille display. Now on the right-hand side of the Braille display, people are always asking what these buttons are for. And the answer is right now, nothing. These are volume keys, and this is a headphone jack. And other than a few beeps, this Braille display doesn't make a lot of noise. It doesn't talk, and you can't play audio files with it. So until the manufacturer, Humanware, decides they want to add some functionality to these devices, you can pretty much ignore these buttons and this headphone jack. To turn this device on for the first time, you have to press and hold the power button for a few seconds. I usually do about 5 seconds, and you'll feel it vibrate. I just felt mine vibrate. And here it says starting, and it has a little spinning circle, or the tactile equivalent of a spinning circle. And it still says starting. It takes a few moments for it to actually start up, and when it does finish doing that, you'll see the word terminal written here. Terminal is the feature on this Braille display that allows us to connect the Braille display to other devices. Now, the BI40X does have some onboard applications, like a basic text editor, for example. We're not going to touch on that much today, but it has an editor, it has a Victor reader, it does have a file manager to help you organize your files, it has a calculator, it has something that will tell you the date and time, and you can actually download books directly to it from places like Bard, and there's a built-in user guide, which is really handy, although you have to be able to know enough about the Braille display to get to the user guide before you can actually read it. It's very handy if you've already gotten up and running with the Braille display, however. There's also a user guide that ships with the device, and you might find that one initially more beneficial for you. But today we're going to talk about connecting the Braille display to other devices like the computer, and actually we're going to start off with the iPad. One of the interesting things about connecting a Braille display, any Braille display, not just the BI40 or BI40X, to an iOS device, iPads, iPhones, whatever, is that you don't want to start by going to your device's Bluetooth settings and connecting them together. This is a little bit counterintuitive for most people, so that's why I wanted to start by talking about that. The first thing that you have to do is get your Braille display into a mode where it can pair with other devices. On the BI40X, the way that we do that is to press Enter where it says Terminal. And then once we do that, we have Connected Devices, Add Bluetooth Device, and a back button. Obviously, what we want to do here is add a Bluetooth device. So I'm going to press Enter on that. And then it says, activate your device in your host devices, and then we have to advance the Braille display, which it's not letting me do. Okay, then it says Bluetooth settings, and it's the Brilliant BI40X. Now it's ready to pair with my iPad. On the iPad, I'm going first to go over to the Settings app, which I'm doing by swiping there because I'm using VoiceOver. You do have to be, this might go without saying, but VoiceOver does have to be operating in order to connect to a Braille display. You won't be able to connect to a Braille display without turning VoiceOver on. So we already have that on here. Now we're going to Settings. And then we want to go to Accessibility.
Return missed calls. Passcode.
Which I will find.
Language, font, keyboard, data, background at refresh.
We were actually in General, so.
Select Control, Display and Home Screen and Accessibility.
There's Accessibility.
Accessibility.
Then we're going to go
off. VoiceOver.
To VoiceOver.
Button. Voice Accessibility. Speech.
And then we're going to select Braille.
Output, VoiceOver, word wrap, alert.
And it's going to start, as long as Bluetooth is on, it's going to start looking for Braille displays.
Choose a Braille display.
And we're going to, we have this part here where it says choose a Braille display. I'm going to swipe past that. It says in progress.
Brilliant BI40X.
Now it says
654.
Brilliant BI40X, and then it has some numbers associated with that. I'm going to double tap that to select that Braille display.
40000000934. Pairing.
And it says pairing.
Brilliant BI40X.
And we're paired.
4.
Now we have now a new device here.
13 p.m.
It says FBC and then DMT, and there's a bunch of whole things. This Braille display is displaying this iPad. The iPads here are all called FBC, Foundation for Blind Children, and then they have parts of their serial number up here. When we want to connect to this Braille display, we're going to press Enter here, and it should say Braille display, and it does. And, oh, I locked this thing.
2:13 p.m.
It doesn't work when it's locked, by the way. Here we go. So now we're actually connected, and it says Settings right here on the Braille display. It actually says Settings in grade 1 or uncontracted Braille. I always think of it as grade 1 because I've been reading it for so long, but now we call it uncontracted Braille. So Settings is spelled out here, S-E-T-T-I-N-G-S. Being a proficient Braille user, the first thing that I want to do is change that, and I can do that by pressing space and the letter G at the same time on the Braille display.
Braille output. Contracted.
Now I've switched to contracted Braille. Now everything that is displayed on the iPad screen is displayed here on the Braille display in contracted Braille. So as I swipe on the screen,
Settings, search field, dictate button.
The information is also changing on the Braille display.
Supervised and managed by Foundation for Blind Children. Learn more about device supervision.
If I go to the home screen,
Setting.
Now I'll see home and even get the hint about how I need to double tap to activate an item. But the cool part as well is that I can control the iPad with the Braille display. If I want to move to the next item, for example,
Trello.
I can hit space and dot 4.
Planner. Strava. Page 1 of 2. Adjustable.
If I want to go to the previous item, I can hit space and dot 1.
Strava. Planner. Trello. Settings. 1 new item.
If I want to, I can use the thumb keys on the front of the keypad to perform the same functions.
Trello.
Next
Planner.
and previous.
Trello. Settings. 1 new item.
So I have lots of different options about how I can use the Braille display and iOS device together. If I want to go up to the status bar, which is that bar that shows us our time, our network connectivity, our Wi-Fi status, our battery power, I can do that by pressing space and S together.
Swipe down with 3 fingers.
And here I am now in the status bar, and I again can move to the next item.
Monday, January, FBC. 53% battery power. 53% battery power. Status
If I want to go back to the home screen, I can press space and the letter H,
Home. Productivity folder.
and I'm back on the
7
home
apps.
screen. If I want to go to the first item, I can do that with space dots 1, 2, 3, or space L for Braille users.
Productivity folder.
I find the productivity folder is the very top left item on this screen. If I want to go to the bottom right of the screen, I can do that by pressing space with dots 4, 5, 6.
Suggestions. Settings. 1 new item.
As I
Tab
move,
to open.
you can see that the cursor focus changes.
Strava. Calendar. Dog. Gmail. To do. Outlook. Rocketbook. Safari. Page 1 of 2. Strava. Planner.
Can you tell this iPad is used in an educational setting?
Trello. Settings. 1
Now here's settings. Now suppose I want to go back to settings. It says double tap to open. That's wonderful, but how can I double tap on my Braille display? The answer is all I have to do is press one of the cursor routing buttons above the item that I want to double tap. So in this case, I want to open settings, so I'm going to find a cursor routing key that's somewhere above this word. I'm going to press it, and it opens.
Settings.
Now,
Search. Dictate. Button.
this is wonderful. I have this
icon
Braille
zooms
display,
into your iPad. Set up icon.
which means I don't need the voice anymore. Well, for me, that's what it means. And for a lot of other Braille users, that's absolutely what it means too. Sometimes you don't need everybody hearing everything that you're doing on your speaking device. And that is actually one of the justifications for using a Braille display, is the privacy that's involved. If you press space and the letter M
Speech off.
for mute, that's how I think of it, now the speech is actually off. And everything that I do on this iPad going forward is only going to happen on the Braille display and the screen, but it's not going to be spoken. So here I see it says, sign in to your iPad, set up iCloud, and I can go on to the next item, which says App Store and more. Now, I've moved my focus forward, but it didn't speak. But I can read on the Braille display that says airplane mode off. If I go back to the home screen with a space H for home, I can again browse all of these items, like the productivity folder, by using Braille display commands. So I'm on my calendar now, but it's still not speaking. If I needed to start speaking again, I can simply toggle the speech back on by pressing space M.
Speech on.
Now our speech is back. Whether I need speech, Braille, or speech and Braille together, I'm able to use the
Productivity
Braille
folder.
display to
7
control the iPad,
Pictures.
and the iPad to
Productivity
control
calendar.
the Braille display. This can be a great teaching tool for students who are learning Braille, because if you want, as their teacher, to have them read Braille without speech, you can always mute the speech. If you want the speech to talk in conjunction with the student learning Braille or reading the Braille, you can still elect to have the speech on. And as you move, everything that you're reading is also spoken. So students can get used to reading Braille and listening and kind of getting the information in a dual modality.
Clock. 2:21 p.m. Double tap to open. Home.
In addition to being able
Double
to
tap to open. Speech off.
read everything on the phone, I can use the Braille keyboard for input. So for example, if I wanted to open Notes, which I don't know where that is here. Let's see.
Speech on.
We're going to see if we can find
Productivity
the
folder, Calendar,
notes.
clock, home, photos, camera, voice map, find my, app store, podcast, measure, settings, Trello, planner, Strava, page 1, doc, Rocketbook, Safari, Rocketbook, Outlook, to do, Gmail, suggestions, Strava.
Okay, so notes are not here.
Productivity folder, 7 apps.
Let's see if we can find them on a different
Monday.
page.
New
They
event.
might have been in the productivity folder, maybe. Let's look in there.
Productivity folder.
So
7
productivity folder, again, I'm going to double tap that by pressing a
apps.
cursor routing button.
Productivity folder, TV, faced, contact, books, music, messages, files.
And that's not where it is. Now I can go back to the previous screen by pressing B with space.
Closing productivity folder.
Kind of handy to be
Productivity
able to do
folder.
that. Let's look on the next
31.
page.
Productivity folder, page 2 of 2. Photo, shortcut, iTunes store, tips, self-service, Zoom, Focus Keeper, Amazon, Mint, REI Co-op, page 2 of 2, doc,
Okay.
Safari, photo booth, home.
So notes is hiding on us a little bit. Let's see what else we can find where we can
Calendar,
type something.
Clock, home, photos, camera, voice memos, find my, app store.
Here we go. Let's look in the App
Double
Store,
tap to open.
just for fun. So we're going to double tap by
Apps
pressing the cursor
today.
routing key.
Heading.
And then we're going to go to the
Tab.
bottom
Search, tab.
so we can
5 of 5.
so we can go to the search tab bar item. We'll go. Now this says search.
Search, heading, games, apps, stories, and more. Search field.
So we have to double tap it to edit.
Search field. Search field. Is
Now I have a blinking cursor on the Braille display where I can type.
and more.
So if I want to look for the Bard mobile app,
Pointed star B-A-R-D.
I'm just typing in Braille. And then when I'm done, I can press enter or space E to enter.
Filters. Button. Bard. Clear text. Cancel. Bard mobile. Books.
Here's the Bard mobile app.
Stars. 249.
I can open that up, and we can then select whether we want to download it. So text input and also reading is possible with the Braille display. It pretty much turns your iPad into a Braille note taker. You can also use it with the iPhone, and you can use it with the iPod Touch. So any iOS device that you want to use using a Braille display is fair game. We recommend mostly iPads because that's really what kids are using in school now. But if they had a phone or an iPod Touch or something like that, they could definitely connect it to that as well. Now, if I lock this iPad, it automatically disconnects from the Braille display because there's nothing to display. When I unlock it,
One notification.
it's going to reconnect. Also, if we turn off the Braille display, which we can do by, we can put it in standby actually by pressing the power button quickly, and we can take it off standby by pressing it quickly again. It's still
Podcast
connected.
Measure.
If for some reason it doesn't reconnect automatically, you can reconnect it by locking and then unlocking the iOS device. Sometimes that does happen. Probably if I were to turn it all the way off, so we can actually press and hold this power button until we feel the vibration, and then the Braille display says shut down, question mark, and then you have to go forward to the OK button and press enter on it. It takes a moment. It says shutting down with an ellipses, and it still says shutting down. And it still says shutting down. Shutting down is what you want to do if you don't want to use your Braille display for a while and you want to conserve your battery. Standby is what you want to do if you need to step away from your Braille display for a little while and then come back to it the same day. It's now shut down, and we're going to turn the Braille display back on and see what it does. So I'm pressing and holding it till it vibrates. That's the power button. And it says starting, and it has its spinning circle of Braille dots. And we're waiting. It still says starting. Now it's back to the home screen on the Braille display where it says terminal mode. So at this point, we've started fresh, but it reconnected automatically anyway, and it actually says, oh, it beeped at us here. Okay, so it's actually connected to the Braille display, but it's not displaying what is on the iPad right now. So it did reconnect, but it's not displaying. Let's see if we can lock the screen and then unlock it. And that did not have the desired effect. So here it still says terminal. So I'm going to press enter, and I'm going to press enter again where it says connected devices. And then I'm going to go to FBC. This is the name of the iPad. I recognize it from earlier because it's like DMPTN, and then a bunch of numbers. Press enter on it. It says Braille display. Now, I'm going to lock it and unlock it, and we're reconnected. So that's not too bad. If you turn, the moral of the story is that if you turn the Braille display all the way off and turn it back on again, you need to go to terminal and then find the device in your connected devices. If you just put the Braille display on standby, then it automatically reconnects when you wake it up. Now we're going to talk about setting up the BI40 to work with a computer running JAWS for Windows. This is how you'll generally receive the package from us, is a package of JAWS for Windows with a Brailliant, or it could be Fusion with the Brailliant Braille display. In contrast with setting up the Braille display on the iPad, when we set up the Braille display to work with the computer, we do need to actually pair it using the Windows Bluetooth pairing settings. So the first thing we'll need to do is turn the Braille display on. You may have heard that vibrate. And we're waiting for it to complete the startup process. So when we see terminal here, we have to press enter on terminal, and then we want to go to where it says add Bluetooth device. We want to go to add Bluetooth device, and then on our computer we want to open settings, which we can do in a number of different ways. I already have it open here, so I do want to demonstrate the process for opening it. We're going to go with a Windows key and the letter I to open settings. We're going to type Bluetooth.
6 results.
And we're going to get some results in our list here. So we're going to arrow down.
Bluetooth and other devices settings.
We want Bluetooth and other devices settings. That's exactly what we want. So we're going to press enter
Add
here.
Bluetooth or other device button. Bluetooth and other devices.
And we're on a button that says add Bluetooth or other device. We're going to press enter on that.
Add a device. Device connection experience. Bluetooth button.
And we're on the Bluetooth button. That's exactly the type of device that we want to add. So we're going to press enter here.
Cancel button.
And it says cancel. That's the button that's available. Right now it's starting to search for the Brailliant, and it may have already found something. We're going to tab over to the list of discovered devices and see what we see.
List box. Brailliant BI40X 65400.
Brailliant BI40X.
Brailliant BI40X.
And then a bunch of numbers. We're going to press enter on
Brailliant
that.
BI40X 65400000934. Done button. New notification from settings. Setting up a device. We're setting up Brailliant BI40X 6540000.
And it's setting this up. We're going to hit enter on the done button. And now this Braille display is back to our connection menu. It actually says USB connection, which isn't what we're trying to accomplish here. But we now have my laptop in our connection list. In my case, FBC2087 is the name of my laptop. So that's the device that we'll connect to when we actually get this thing all done. But we're not all done. We have connected the Braille display successfully to Bluetooth, but we haven't configured it in JAWS yet. So the next thing that we have to do is close this window
JAWS Professional.
and go to our JAWS window. Now, this part, I think, is where people get hung up. They feel like they've already configured the device, and why isn't it working? So, as I mentioned, we have to configure this now to work with JAWS, and that process is slightly counterintuitive. If we go down our JAWS options menu,
Braille ...
we see that we have a Braille dialog box here. And if we were to open that,
Braille basic
we would
settings
see
dialog. The active Braille display is no display. Brilliant I-14.
that we have an option
Modify settings ... Add Braille display ...
to add a Braille display. Unfortunately, this does not work. It's right here, and it says Add Braille Display. For some Braille displays, this doesn't work, and the Braille BI40X is one of them. So if you have ever tried to set up this Braille display and become frustrated because this process isn't working, this might be the problem. We're going to exit out of
JAWS
here.
Professional.
And instead of going to the Braille menu in our options menu, we're going to go to the utilities menu,
Utilities view. Menu.
and we're going to go down to the synthesizer and Braille
JAWS
display
tab, Voice
manager.
Assistant, JAWS tab, Screen Shadings, Synthesizer and Braille Manager. B.
We're going to press enter here,
Leaving menus, JAWS Synthesizer and Braille Manager dialog. This list displays all synthesizers and Braille displays that are currently installed. To add or remove devices from this list, choose the Add, Remove, or Change Devices button. Preview, speech synthesizers closed.
and it basically just told us what we need to do. So what we're going to do is in this tree view, we're going to navigate to Braille displays. We're going to expand that
Braille
item
displays open
with our
to
right
5
arrow,
items.
and we're
Level
going to go
1, no
down.
display, 1 of 5. Braille no touch. Braille note left parent signed right parent. Brilliant by left parent default right parent. Brilliant by 14.
And we're going to
by
go
left
to
parent, default right
Brilliant BI. We actually don't have this Braille display in our list.
Read only at a type
So
code.
here,
Add, remove, or change devices ... button. Alt+A.
we have an add, remove, or change devices. That's what we want to press enter on here.
Select device type dialog. Select the device type you want to add, modify, or remove. Select the device type. Braille displays radio button checked. 2 of 2. Alt+B.
We arrowed down to Braille displays.
Next greater
We're
button.
going to hit the next
Alt+N.
button.
Select the Braille components you want to add or modify. Select components dialog. Select the Braille components you want to add or modify.
So we're going to look now for this particular Braille display again as the Brilliant BI40X.
Braille light left, Optilic Alpha, SE's not check, Iris not check, Easy time not, APH refresh, Braille 8, Bomb Pronto, Bomb Super, Bomb Unit Braille display, Bomb Vario Connect, Bomb Vario, Eco Braille, Handy Tech, Braille Edge not HIMS Braille not check, Orbit Reader, Brilliant by 20X, Brilliant by 20X not check, Brilliant by 40X not checked, 20 of 33.
It's not checked, but we want to check that one, so we're going to hit our space bar.
Checked.
And then we're going to
Read
tab.
only edit this Braille display connects through a USB or Bluetooth port. Alt+D. Less back button. Next greater button.
To
Alt+N.
next. Press space.
Set options for the Braille no touch display. This Braille display connects through USB or a serial Bluetooth port. Set device options dialog. Set options for the Braille note. Less back button. Alt. Select the output COM3. USB. COM. Less back button. Alt+B.
Okay, it said
Select
set
the output port.
options.
Edit combo. COM3.
We're not going to use
Alt+.
USB. We're going to use COM3 because that's the only other port here. And we're going to
Set
press
options
space
for
on
the Braille
next.
note. Left parent side right parent display.
Oh, it's
This
asking
Braille
us to do
display
all these other ones. All these other displays here
COM3. Less back button. Next.
we're also in our
Set
list.
options for the Brilliant by display. This COM3.
So we
less
don't,
back, next
you
greater
won't
button.
need to
Set
set all of these up,
COM3.
but I have a lot of Braille
less back,
displays
next
that I use
greater.
with this
Select
computer.
the Braille
So
display that you want to use each time you start JAWS.
Okay.
If the Braille display does not appear in the list, choose the
this says to select the Braille display we want to use every time we start JAWS. Well, I want to use the Brilliant BI40X.
6 of 6.
So I arrowed to that one, and that's the one that I want JAWS to look for every time
Left
JAWS
back button. Finish
turns
button.
on.
JAWS synthesizer and Braille manager dialog. You must restart JAWS for the changes to take effect. OK button. JAWS synthesizer and Braille manager dialog. Add, remove, or change devices.
All right, now I'm going to
Close
tab
button,
to the
Alt+C.
close button and press
JAWS
space on it.
professional.
Now it said that I need to restart JAWS in order for the changes to take effect. There is a setting that you may hear about where you don't, where you can actually set it up so that JAWS automatically detects Braille displays that come into Bluetooth range and automatically connects the Braille display without having to restart JAWS. Unfortunately, we have found that that feature does not work with the BI40X. What happens is it generally connects for just a moment and then it disconnects by itself, and you have to restart JAWS to get it to work anyway. So if you've heard about that setting and you have a Brailliant BI40X, you don't want to use that. I'm going to close JAWS with an insert F4. And now I am going to restart JAWS. So we have the Braille display connected now, and we can see that it says JAWS version 2022.2112.24. That's a build number, and then the ILM. This is what's actually displayed in the JAWS window right now. When I pull something else up on the computer, like the Start menu, it actually says Search Box, and then we have a blinking cursor where we can type. I can now choose to type on the Braille display itself,
Notepad app, press right to switch preview.
Or I can choose to do it still on the computer.
Notepad app,
and I can either way see what's displayed on the Braille display. We're going to go ahead and open Notepad for a moment.
Untitled-Notepad, edit.
And here we go, we have just a blank document. Now, when I start writing, it's going to look a little weird. Let's see why.
Hello 4.
It says, comma, hello 4. It's supposed to say hello, period. The reason it says comma, hello 4 is because I typed in Unified English Contracted Braille, and our input setting is Computer Braille. So one of the very first things that you'll want to do when you set up this Braille display is change your Braille grade input. Now, the best way to do this and to be able to see what settings are available is to go to the JAWS Settings Center, which we can get to with Insert and the number 6.
Notepad-JAWS Settings Center.
Now, this is the Notepad JAWS Settings Center file. We want to modify the default one so it doesn't make our settings change just for this one application. So we're going to hit a Control-Shift-D.
JAWS Settings Center default left.
JAWS Settings Center default, and it says left parentheses all applications. That's how you know that now when you change these settings, they're not going to be application specific settings. It's modifying the settings for all the apps that we have on the computer. We're going to go down this tree view till we get to Braille settings.
Forms, text, speech, and say all, graphics, Braille closed.
And we're going to go right.
Braille open, 7 items.
And we're going to look. We have 7 different categories of Braille settings.
Level 1, general, Braille marking, cursor, flash messages, structured mode, advanced, closed. Display clock / time and status cells, closed. Level 0, Braille and text, level 1.
And that's that. We're going to go up here to General.
Closed. General closed.
We're going to expand that. We're going to go down to
Translation closed. 1 of 9.
Translation. And we are going to open that and go down.
Level 3. Language English - United States. 1 of 5. Translation General Braille.
You could change your language here, but we're not going to do that.
Output Computer Braille.
Output, it says Computer Braille. When we want to change any settings in the JAWS Settings Center, we press the space bar to toggle among the options. So I want to change this so that it is Unified English Grade 2. So we're going to hit the space bar until we hear that.
U.S. English Grade 1, 2 of 5. U.S. English Grade 2, 3 of 5. Unified English Braille Grade 1, 4 of 5. Unified English Braille Grade 2, 5 of 5.
Okay, so now the messages on the Braille display are going to be in US or Unified English Grade 2 Contracted Braille. We're going to go down to our next option,
Input computer Braille.
and now it's set for input computer Braille. I don't want to input in computer Braille either, because even though I know how to do that, most people don't, and most people will never have to learn it. I prefer using contractions. So we're going to hit our space bar, and we're going to listen for Unified English Grade 2.
Unified English Braille Grade 2, 2 of 2.
There it is. Now, we've modified those settings. We have a
Show
few
current
other
word in
settings.
Computer Braille unavailable.
Show current word in computer Braille. That setting's not available in the default file here, I don't think.
Language profiles ... Level 2. Braille.
And we can do something with language profiles, which we're not going to cover today. We're going to go to the OK button.
Untitled dash notepad. Edit.
Now, when I type here, I typed hello again, and now
Hello.
we have a capital H, E-L-L-O, period, and it's displayed correctly on the Braille display as well. Now everything is in contracted Braille,
Bottom of file.
and I can type in contracted Braille. Okay, this is a test of this Braille display. That's what it says on the Braille display. Let's see what JAWS says.
This is a test of this Braille display.
Okay, we're in business. Now everything is displayed the way that we want it to be displayed. Not only can we type text on the computer, but we can also control our computer with the Braille display, much in the same way as we could do with the iPad. If I want to open the menu bar, for example, I can press space M.
Menu bar file F.
If I want to move across the menu bar, I can do that with space dot 5
Edit E. Format O. View V. Help H. System.
or space dot 2 to go in the other direction.
View V. Format O. Edit E. File F.
I can pull the menu down by pressing space dot 4,
Menu. File menu. New control plus new window control plus shift plus N.
or
W.
I can go up by pressing space dot 1.
Exit X.
I'm going to go to exit here and press enter.
Leaving menus. Notepad dialog. Do you want to save?
So we have a dialog box here that asks if we want to save this file. We don't want to save it. I can easily move over to Don't Save and select that
Pause professional.
with the Braille display. So again, we have full control over our computer. We can open the Start menu.
Box edit.
We can do a search for Word.
Word tab. Press right
We
to
can
switch
open it.
menu. Document 1 dash Word.
We do all kinds of fun things.
Document 1. Document 1 dash Word. Edit.
Half the battle is getting the Braille display set up the way that you want it. Once you've accomplished that, then there are a whole bunch of commands that you can learn, which we're not going to cover in this training, for using the Braille display with your computer, like space dots 3, 4 to open your start screen. It makes sense. It's space and ST.
Search box edit.
Space E for exit,
Document
or
1 dash
escape,
Word. Edit.
rather. There are lots of other commands like that, and you can learn how to control your computer as much or as little as you want. The bottom line is having a Braille display on your computer gives you a very easy way to read text. And just like we were able to do with the iOS device, we can
Speech on demand.
turn off JAWS speech and still control our computer with our Braille display. Just like that. I want to say one more thing before we wrap up, and that is, just as we experienced with the iPad, there are a couple of things to bear in mind when we want to turn the Braille display off and turn it back on again. If we press the power button briefly to put the Braille display on standby, when we press it briefly again to wake it up, we'll find our Braille display is still connected to the device, and we still have control. If, however, we turn the Braille display all the way off, we'll find that we need to go back into the terminal menu and reconnect the Braille display under connected devices. So just keep that in mind when you're using this. You would want to, again, go to standby if you're going to step away from the Braille display, but you're going to come back to it sometime that day. I tend to turn my Braille display off at the end of the day and charge it perhaps overnight. If you're using these throughout the course of a workday, you get about a full day's battery charge out of it, perhaps a little longer, but if you use it all day, every day, you'll probably find that you'll want to charge it up just about every night. And the best way to do that is generally to turn it all the way off and charge it, and then turn it all the way back on when you're finished charging it. This concludes our very first video training for the MLB program. Stay tuned for information about future trainings. We will be having a live webinar training in the month of March, and I will be sending some details about that to our MLB listserv. So stay tuned. You will not only have a chance to receive training about some JAWS and Fusion basics, but you will have the opportunity to ask questions live and have me respond to those. So stay tuned for more information about that. Thank you very much for your time. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video.